Just want to introduce everybody to Stephanie and give a super warm welcome to her. She is going to be our highlight for this interview for Black History Month. So thank you to Stephanie, before I forget, and Heidi for recording. Stephanie is a published author. She has a new book out called Speak to the Spirit. It's inspirational and insightful poetry, which is fantastic. I have read some of it. She's also a podcast host, a mother, a wife, and a friend, which thank you for letting me call you a friend. Mm-hmm. She is also a certified life and relationship coach, which I don't know where you fit that in. She offered solid life coaching skills and self-improvement to all of her clients. Mm-hmm. Now let's begin the fun part. Stephanie, how about you tell us about yourself, things you're interested in, and when do you find free time? Because I don't know how you fit that in.
So a little bit about myself, which was kind of not mentioned with what you said, is that I do have a bachelor's degree from the University of Illinois in Chicago. I've been writing since I was a kid. And so before all those other titles came about, mother, wife, life coach and everything, I was always a writer first. I started writing when I was very, very young. I still remember my first story I wrote in about first or second grade. And my writing has just evolved over the years with life experiences, more education. I started getting more into nonfiction when I was in college because I had to write a lot of papers, and I saw that I even had a knack for that. And so that's a little bit about me. Like you said, I have 5 children. I've been married for about 14 years. I currently reside in Minnesota right now, but I'm originally from Chicago. And I think that's it. And so I have, a few books published, and I can't think of anything else. So
a few. Okay, make sure to highlight the few books because that's very, very important. Yeah. So with books, since we're talking about books, what prompted you to write your current book? I mean, it's a fantastic book, but what prompted it? What caused you to decide that this was a good time? Because I know just from us talking as friends, this was like a long time in the making, but like what prompted that?
Well, so let me go back a little bit to answer your other question, which I did not answer about time, because you are correct. I don't have a lot of time. I do have to kind of squeeze stuff in when I can. And, sometimes it's frustrating the pace that I'm able to move sometimes, but because it's not as much as I have the appetite for, because I have a big appetite. But I just take it one day at a time, and it's really taught me how to be patient and take stuff one day at a time. And usually, as long as I'm persistent, I always get stuff finished. It just takes me a little bit longer. So I wanted to answer that. And so to talk about the book, when you were saying what prompted me to write it now, is actually this book is a revised version of an old book. And so the book is a compilation of poetry that I've written over a span of about 10 or 15 years, possibly even 20. Some of the poems in the book are as I wrote them when I was 15 years old. And so now I'm much older than 15. So it's been a long time that I've written them, but I used to write poetry. Again, I talked about how I have been writing since I was a kid. And so one of the first things that I started writing outside of short stories was poetry. And over the years, I just accumulated all these poems that I had written. And as I got older, it was like, what am I going to do with all of these? And some people would say, you should put these in a book and stuff like that. I entered some poetry in a contest when I was maybe about 15 or 16. It got accepted, and it was put into a compilation of poems from other people, some anthologies. And so I thought, let me make this into a book. So by the time I got about 18, 19, maybe a little after that, I got the idea to put all my poems together in a book. And so at that time, if you can believe it or not, I just printed them out on sheets of paper. And I went to FedEx and had them make it into like a paper book for me, a folded paper book. And I started selling those at church to my family and friends and stuff like that. And so when I got a little older and I graduated from college, I wanted to do something a little bit more solid than just a paper book. Those things kind of just sold to my family and friends, and it didn't really go anywhere outside of that. And so, and again at church. And so, so I tried to, because I have other books that I was trying to get published, and I kept sending out, letters for people to see if they were interested in publishing my book or giving me a deal. I got so many rejection letters, I lost count. And so the opportunity to do self-publishing presented itself to me with Amazon's Create Space. So before that, authors would have to pay a lot of money to do self-publishing. You have to have a lot of money up front. but Create Space presented the opportunity for you to be able to do some things yourself and cut back on the money. And so when I heard about that, I jumped on it. And so I wanted to do like a test run to see how it works or how to do it. And I know I'm talking too long, let me make it fast. How to do it with a smaller book. So I tried my poetry book first. It was already kind of put together. I did it, it got published. I was very, very happy, but I never did anything else with the book. It was like a test run for my larger book. And so the poetry book just went on the shelf. I didn't do anything with it. I didn't market it. And so recently I decided, you know what, that book has just been sitting there. I did a lot of work to it. Let me put it out and actually market it. So I redid it again, revised the book and put it out again. And that's what I just put out recently about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So yeah, long answer to your question, but yeah.
No, that's fantastic. And we will provide the link to the book.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of books, I know that this kind of links to your podcast. So I would love it if you talked a little bit about your podcast as well. Just tell us a little bit about how the two connect and, things in the podcast that are very relevant to some of the things that you have in your book as well.
Yeah, so I am a podcast host of a show called Outside the Box, where I aim to help people see that God is bigger than their boxes. Everything I write and everything I do is Christian based, because that's a big part of my life. And a lot of the poems in the book are Christian based, but they don't come from your typical kind of Christian perspective. They show a lot of struggle. They show a lot of, even questioning if you're doing the right thing, where is God, stuff like that, struggles with identity, relationships, and things like that. And so I'm always trying to help people see that, through all of the stuff that I went through and all the stuff that I saw other people going through, I was able to still cut through and hold on to God to some extent, even if it was very small throughout those things. And I saw how it helped me grow over time. So my book is basically that way. My podcast is the same thing. I want to help people to understand that God is bigger than what we can think or see, and he can be with us through all the circumstances, even those that people typically think that God has abandoned them when they're going through stuff, or especially if you're struggling with depression and things like that, you kind of lose sight of God. And so I all of my writing, all of my coaching, all of my books is just to help people see God through all those difficult circumstances in life. And so through my podcast, I talk about depression. I've had a show recently about porn, overcoming porn addiction. I did another show about, seeing God through losing a loved one and things like that, just to help people understand that God is there.
Fantastic. And that's also something that people can subscribe and get updates on, which is fantastic. Yeah. Now, since we're talking about books, is there another book coming out anytime in the near future? Because I know you have tons of time to write books.
Yeah, so my book, like I said before about the poetry book, I kind of did it just to get through the Create Space process, but it was I really wanted to work on my larger book, which is a nonfiction book called God, Why Am I Not Married? 9 Reasons You Might Still Be Single. That book is a series of 9 books, and each book goes into a reason why you might not be married or have problems in your relationship, and why God may not seem to be answering you like you think he should. Right after I published my poetry book, I published that book about a year or so later. But again, I had to put it on the shelf. I was having kids. I wasn't able to market or anything like that. So very recently, I decided to also revise that. But as I'm revising it, I'm putting it out in the series of 9 books, because before it was all one book and it was over 300 pages. It was really big. So I decided to make it into a series of 9 books. And I am currently in the process of revising those books and putting them back out again. And in revising, I'm also adding new content that I learned since I wrote the first one. So yeah, that's what I have coming up. And hopefully I'll be done with at least the first 4 books of that series by the summer.
That's a big accomplishment. That is fantastic. So now, with all of that said, I would love for you to read a passage out of your book to highlight you as a strong Black female, as my friend, a mother, a life relational coach. I can't even put all the things on my list here that you do. So I would love for you to read something for us.
Okay, so I will read this one in honor of Black History Month. And this, and just for anybody watching, I do have some video excerpts on my website, which will be located around the video somewhere, where you can not only get links to my books on Amazon and any other platforms that I have them, but also get commentary for some of the poems that I've written, and then to get a taste of some of my poetry. So if you're interested in that, you can look into that. So this particular poem, of course, in honor of Black History Month, I want to read this one. And this poem I wrote after I visited Nigeria. So I went to Nigeria some years ago, and I was very, very surprised by how I felt when I got there. And so I wrote a poem about that. So this is the poem, and it's called Home, like going home. So it's called Home. So it says, it was there that time slowed enough to whisper me my name and revealed to me my future, where I'd been and why I came. Peace of mind filled my soul as I breathed the toasted air. The soil felt familiar when my feet were never there. The sun smothered me with kisses, welcoming me back home. It was the first time on this planet that I didn't feel alone. But instead, there was a place that recognized me for me and didn't ask me to explain the eyes from which I see. I was free to be me without labels on my skin. My mistakes were my own, and not because of whom I was akin. As a limb, I settled easily into the massive and vibrant tree, and I knew that hundreds of years hadn't separated me.
Ooh, I'm getting a little choked up. That was fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you so much, Stephanie. That I just need a minute. That was really beautiful. Again, thank you so very much. Thank you to SDA and to Heidi, who none of you can see, but is doing all of our tech work. Again, huge thank you to Stephanie. Thank you for all the work you have done with SDA. Thank you for this interview. Thank you to Heidi and to SDA for all the things that we do together and individually to make Shakopee and Minnesota and hopefully the United States a better place for all people. There's going to be another series. Hopefully you'll see Stephanie again, which I'm sure you will. So stay tuned for that. Thanks.